come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid2. Joining me today is Deadpoolzilla.
Hi.
And Ruben DeBoard, the Comics Kid 2099.
Hello.
So this is Geeky Gentlemen Who Would Win, so I decided that instead of doing like a discussion topic, we just talk about who would win in a battle, or just, do a battle real quick. So our first match is going to be Deadpoolzilla versus Comics Kid 2099. 3, 2, 1, go.
Omaira, ni shinderu. Nani?
Oh man, looks like Ruben clearly was defeated decisively there. Well, Deadpoolzilla, I guess that makes you the champion, unless of course there's anyone else here that can challenge.
Hold on a motherfucking minute.
Holy shit! Recue the intro, recue the intro!
Nani?
Welcome everyone to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. Joining us back today is Steve motherfucking Baxi.
It's me. I'm back. I'm alive. I'm doing things. Hello.
Yay, Steve's back. Everyone clap.
Welcome back. Yay. Welcome back.
Still hating everything and getting the terrible comments. I appreciate all of them.
Yay.
I did burn in hell temporarily, but I took a break.
Nice. Yeah, Steve is back
It's more like
tonight.
hell needed a break from you, Steve.
Yes, I'm so excited to have Steve back. Deadpoolzilla, of course, graciously filled in for him in the interim. That was a good 4-month hiatus, sir. So you owe me like twice the episodes of Geeky Gentlemen now. No, it's a good 4-month hiatus. So Deadpoolzilla, we thank you, of course, and so this will be the little hand the baton off episode, but literally who would wins are our topic tonight, and this kind of spun out of Ruben and I just talking off recording the last week. So Ruben, what about fan fights really got us into it, like the who would win kind of fan battle thing?
I don't remember what got us talking about it when we were talking about that off camera last week, but I think you and I were both just kind of talking about how arbitrary it is, and it's a staple of fandom, like has been for as long as I've been reading comics, and I guess it goes beyond comics too, and I'm sure it's been a staple going back to the 60s at least, but I think it's a very interesting thing to discuss, and it's still very arbitrary. Like, I don't think there's going to be any, like, right or wrong answer to this, like, debate. Not even a debate, just like, I don't think there's any right or wrong way to look at which character would win in a fight. I think it's just an interesting thing to look at.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and start this out by going kind of round robin, and since it's Steve's great, triumphant return, we'll start with him. Steve, what are your opinion on who would wins in a general sense?
I don't love them. I used to be interested because I thought there'd be like some interesting like theoretical arguments about who would have to win in certain fan fights, like for example Hawkeye versus Green Arrow. That's a weird conceptual fight where, granted, both are the best archers in their respective universe, but the premise behind Hawkeye is that he's trained, and the premise behind Green Arrow is that he's not. Mm-hmm. So technically Hawkeye would have to win that 9 times out of 10. But that's not usually how fan fights go, and that's not usually how people are thinking about it, so it sort of just turns into who's your favorite character in that moment, and it can get kind of immature and boring. Mm-hmm. But when you cut back into more of the, like, how do these two characters have a dynamic with each other that might be different and challenging, it gets more interesting again. Like, Darkseid versus Thanos isn't as interesting to me as like Darkseid versus Death, because they're sort of symbolically the same thing. Green Arrow Hawkeye is a fun one. The classic one is Goku versus Superman, and I think that's a really, really imbalanced fight in which Goku wins basically every time, but no one seems to agree with me.
I certainly don't.
It's wrong, and that's okay. But fan fights are weird. I like the idea of just talking about who could pull through in these situations. I just don't like fandoms, and I think fandoms get too stocked up in these sorts of things, and they just refuse to admit that it's almost a buyer's remorse kind of thing. Like, well, I own 50 comics with Batman in them and only 20 with Superman, therefore Batman has to win.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fair enough. Dipplezilla, what are your opinion on who would wins?
Well, who would wins with me are, like, I'm so bored of, like, your typical Green Arrow or Hawkeye or Goku versus Superman, because we've done those to death. I've always enjoyed fan fights where you really have to think outside the box, like, instead of Green Arrow, how about Bullseye versus Green Arrow? Or like, Kylo Ren versus Azula from Avatar. Or something like to that degree where you could see them on equal ground, but they have, like, certain abilities or weapons that could throw the other off.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting.
And you've done videos like that on your channel, right?
Yeah, several times.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. As you started to say that, I was thinking, wait a minute, he's done that before. I've seen that somewhere before.
Mm-hmm. For me, generally speaking, I quite like fan battles, in the proper dosage. Some of it, yeah, I completely agree with Steve. It gets really fucking petty and stupid and just kind of becomes nerd shouting matches, and that's typically where I exit, a la Comic Vine's battles forum. And then other times, though, they're, like, really fun and kind of hilarious, and I don't know, I can definitely see the appeal of them, and I think that's why you've had so many YouTube channels in particular take off that just do this. Death Battle's probably the most well-known. There's Superpower Beatdown. I think those are the two most popular. And then you've got a bunch of others. Like, I was just today doing my research because I'm a professional podcaster and I do that. Just searching through YouTube channels that do this. And, like, they're so common that, like, a channel was just called Another Crossover Fighting thing. I'm like, wow, that's really original. And like it's to the point where it's a bit oversaturated, and so there's one channel I came across that had a series called, like, Battle Royale, and they only got 3 episodes in, and then there just wasn't enough market for them to, like, really grab onto and catch people's attention with their version of fan battles. And I mean, to be fair, Death Battle does it really, really well at this point, regardless on how you feel about, like, their outcomes. They do their best to actually make an argument. They do pretty decent animation most of the time. So I don't know. It gets kind of outrageous.
They also don't pull the shit that Superpower Beatdown does, which is they give you the opposite ending if you wanted it.
Yeah, that's like a whole separate discussion within this, and I do want to talk more in particular about, like, the different channels and the different ways in which these go. But but I think it makes sense to generally talk about just the general concept of who would wins to begin with.
Yeah. My thing is that I just feel like, to add to your point, Ian, is that it does feel oversaturated, which is why, like, why can't we just have some change in these fight videos where you just have random ass characters that you wouldn't expect these two to fight, but that just makes it all the more interesting, because then you can add, well, this character can attack this person this way, or that character can attack this character this way, and it's not like an OP character fighting like someone weaker. Just have it like they're on the same power set, but you don't normally think of them together. Like, again, like I said, Bullseye fighting Green Arrow.
Yeah, that is a combination I don't think I've seen, but it makes perfect sense. I don't know. Ruben, have you seen any of these Who Would Wins that you really liked, or did you do any watching of channels this week for prep?
I've seen some of them, like, where people will talk about them. I haven't watched any of the videos from that channel, and you're selling me on it pretty good. Like, the more you talk about it, the more interesting it sounds to me. Even though, like, this kind of thing, I'm kind of with you guys, Steve, in that sometimes it annoys me when I hear people talk about like who would win in a fight, and I'm just thinking like it's completely like that discussion is just not important to whatever. Kurt Busiek, who's a writer, he one time made a really good point about like not even characters in different universes, just like in the Marvel universe. He was saying that like Namor has fought the Thing and has lost, and Namor has fought the Hulk and has won. So in theory, the Thing should fight the Hulk and win easily, but the Hulk has fought the Thing and has won before. And so it's like, it's not consistent because the creators want a specific outcome when they're having these things happen in a story. They may want the Hulk to win for a specific reason. So even though the Thing has beaten the Namor, who has beaten the Hulk, Hulk may not lose against the Thing. And so there's no like rule book that says like, okay, this character is at this power level, and so they will fight at that power level all the time. I feel like, and that it makes sense because like in real life, you know, there are days where I'm going to feel like crap. I'm not going to be at 100% because I've been, you know, moving furniture all day or whatever. So if you suddenly threw me into a gladiator ring, I wouldn't be at my best, whereas someone who's well rested and has eaten food all day or whatever, they might be a little more apt to win. And so I feel like there's all sorts of different things that a lot of times I'll see people, they'll do like, who would win in a fight, Batman versus whatever. But Batman is blindfolded and he has one hand tied behind his back. And it's like they put all these handicaps on someone. And I'm thinking, okay, so you very clearly want Batman to lose this fight. Otherwise, you would just say who would win in a fight. You wouldn't throw 100 different handicaps on this character. Like, and so in that way, I feel like sometimes these discussions kind of annoy me, but the more we talk about it, I am liking I do want to go and watch some of these videos you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's undeniably an appeal to it, just based on kind of a, I don't know, more like a statistician kind of feeling. Like, all right, now when you really think about this, when you really break it down, who does have the better chance? And I don't know, I know shit about fighting, really dead serious. Like, what I know about fighting, I've learned through, like, really bad sources, like kung fu movies and stuff. But I still, like, catch myself from time to time trying to talk somewhat expertly just from shit I've gleaned. And so I think it's, like, kind of all wrapped up in that. So it doesn't just have to be, like, you know, typical superhero stuff. I think about this stuff a lot. Like, I want someone to do a Zorro comic where Zorro fights a samurai, because that's interesting to me. I feel like there's this somewhere in the back of your head, there's this undeniable, yeah, this is just, it is interesting. What if Spider-Man fought Batman? What is that like? And there's just something undeniably fascinating to kind of scratch your brain at. And yeah, you're right. If someone's doing it in good faith, it's fun. But if they're just being like, okay, Spider-Man fights Batman, but Batman has no prep time, and Spider-Man knows everything there is to know about Batman, and I'm like, okay, yeah, then Batman loses. That's the objective that you've set. And
well, I think part of what you both are hinting at is, despite both these things doing it, comics do it more, and comics want to do it the way the other thing does, which is comics are not shonen, and shonen's the best and almost only place where you can get here are two characters purely in a ring that want to fight each other and have no goal except fighting each other. And everything is driven on creating an action scene as the conflict. Whereas in comics and most Western things in general, fights have to have some sort of goal orientation. So if Namor is fighting the Thing in a Marvel comic and the outcomes are inconsistent depending on the story, it's because of the story. It's because the action scene has to serve whatever goal is being set for it.
And they got a name for that in the fan communities. That's plot armor, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when you try to make that transition, say, okay, here's just Namor, and here's just the Thing, and they're just going to beat the crap out of each other, it's not a thing we would ever actually see in a comic book setting, and we would see it in a shonen setting. But we don't have any way to like consistently apply the rules to both characters, or even like dredge out what the maximum capabilities of either one of them would be in that perfect scenario. because he just doesn't exist. Like, what is Batman just purely fighting for the sake of fighting? That's not really a Batman thing.
It really isn't. And then there's like just
the biggest problem with Batman I've always had is he claims to be a master of all the martial arts, but he's never like taken mentally into account what martial arts do for you as a person. So if you just threw Batman into a ring and said, "Okay, beat the shit out of a person," I don't think he could actually do it.
Damn.
Did you guys ever read the Avengers vs. X-Men tie-in called Versus?
Some of them, yeah.
I don't think so.
It's actually funny, Ruben, that you mentioned Namor versus Thing, because one of the first fights was Namor versus Thing, and the Thing beat him underwater. You know, that place where Namor's supposed to be all powerful. And also in the same issue, you had Magneto lose to Iron Man.
See, and I get that Iron Man is made like special non-metal armor, but like his name is Iron Man. Like you would think Magneto would win that one.
Yeah.
I had a friend.
Can I just jump off something Steve said? Because you mentioned that like rarely in comics do we do where it's just the grudge match kind of thing. And when we do it, it's super not satisfying, like when Marvel and DC did their first big crossover, I want to say late 90s or maybe very, very early 2000s, where it was like the two universes had to battle because of like Galactus-like beings in both universes. And it was fan-voted battles and everything, and it's just like, though that entire story arc was super unsatisfying because the outcomes just didn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, and some of the fights really sucked. Like the Wolverine and Lobo fight. Oh my god, that was stupid. Like, they just fall under a table and then Wolverine comes out. And then you had Wonder Woman lose to Storm because she was wielding Thor's hammer. Or no, was it?
Yeah, it's just so that stuff, it can just be super unsatisfying in Western comics for some reason, which, I didn't think about Shonen because damn if the Dragon Ball tournament arcs aren't the best arcs in the entire series.
Damn if the tournament arcs aren't the best arcs in every Shonen ever. Like, name one where that's not true.
Because that's the one where it's literally the Shonen writer going, "Hey, this is what you came for."
Yeah, fair enough. So I don't know, that's a really, really good point, because I guess I'd never thought about it in those terms, but it's super accurate. See, this is why we missed you, Steve.
And it's kind of... Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned that we don't really get to see that as much in Western entertainment. And I was, I guess it was last year, I was reading one of the Secret Wars tie-ins. It was Battle World, and the premise was basically like galactic beings pulling lesser beings from other realities into a battlefield and saying, "Hey, you guys fight each other." And like, it was a limited thing, but I'm thinking, why couldn't you just do that as like an ongoing series? Say like you have the Collector and the Grand Master, and then they each grab like a person from the Marvel multiverse and say, "You two fight," and then whoever wins gets to go home. And then they both have an incentive to want to win. And that could be interesting. I don't know how long you could make that go, but like, if people, in theory, you could have the same audience as people who are into Dragon Ball. So like, I wonder how well that would do in a Western comic book, where the extent of the story would be these two both want to go home, so one of them is going to lose. Like,
yeah, they did that already. It was called Contest of Champions.
That might have been what the name of the issue was. I called it Battle World, but yeah, it was a mini series called Contest of Champions. And then I haven't read the original Contest of Champions, but do you think they could do that as like an ongoing thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to quote, I don't know how long it would last. I mean, it depends on how much people just love seeing people beat the shit out of each other. Which, if you read Shonen, then by all means, all for it, dog. But, to quote going back to what you guys were saying about plot convenience is, I got to be honest, sometimes I fall to plot convenience, because whenever I'm writing my stories and having two characters fight, I always have like, okay, there needs to be a definitive winner. And sometimes I'm a little biased, and I feel like that's a big driving force that no one wants to bring up is it depends on how much the writer likes the other character.
Well, there's that, and then there's just, like, what makes an interesting story. Because, like, you know, the famous one is Batman vs. Superman, right? Mm-hmm. What could you possibly do to make Superman beating Batman interesting and not just feel incredibly obvious, right? Like, just imagine, not just the fan outrage, but just imagine the comic book where Superman just demolishes Batman in a fight, and Batman doesn't come up with, like, a clever way to win or anything. It's just over instantly. And it's just, like, it'd be a 2-panel comic book.
Well, I've had, like, all these one-sided fights that made no... Yeah. It's kind of funny, because I remember there was also in Marvel, there was Punisher and Sentry fighting.
Yeah, just like... it's not interesting. Like, yeah, it's done to death, but Batman being able to beat Superman, there's something undeniably interesting there. It's about, like, the overcoming the impossible obstacle, blah, 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 blah. But, like, Superman beating Batman, it's so obvious and just unfair that it's such a boring comic to read, just conceptually. I have no idea how you make that interesting on any level. Whereas, you know, Batman vs. Superman, yeah, it can be interesting, even when it's stupid.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, even, I remember one comic I was reading where Batman openly admits, he says, I can't beat Superman. There's no, I could wear him down a bit, but no, he would kill me if he really wanted to.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's interesting just look at all that, and this is probably a good time to transition and talk about more of the channels that just do it as shows. I just want to say this real quick. I have no idea how anyone legally makes money doing these things.
Wow, I didn't even know they made money.
Yeah, it just absolutely floors me that DC, Marvel, all these anime studios have not just shut these channels the fuck down. Like, I don't understand it. But that's like, I can't even upload a 10-second clip of the latest DC movie to my YouTube channel, but, like, blatant copyright infringement can happen with these characters, and yet they got sponsors like Blue Apron and Dollar Shave Club. I'm just like, I don't get it. But regardless of all that, yeah, so, like, Death Battle and Superpower Beatdown are really interesting. Now, Steve, you said you don't like that Superpower Beatdown does the alternate endings.
No, it's annoying because it just goes to the whole point of this, which is the thing I don't like about fan battles, which is there are two toxic fan groups, and they both want the other person to win, and it doesn't really matter as long as they can keep arguing about who won. So if you give them both answers, they can just keep arguing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like death battles. I disagree with them, but at least they're
honestly,
fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Superpower Beatdown, it's like, people still bitch about it, even though I'm like, you people voted for that character to win.
Well, that's the thing, is by making it a vote, you just like, oh, well, if just more of my fan base had seen this video, like, then we would have won. It's like, yeah, that is undeniably stupid. The conceit I like about the way Superpower Beatdown does their things versus the way Death Battle does theirs. Death Battle does an analysis of the characters, and they make a lot of crazy assumptions sometimes. Like, you know, we can talk about the Superman Goku one. The one everyone harps on is they measure Goku's speed by how fast he's able to fly down Snake Way. And, like, everyone gets up in arms about that one. It's like, no, that's not a good indicator of his top speed, and blah, 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 blah. Like, so Death Battle does all this analysis to really try to be somewhat arguably objective. Whereas Superpower Beatdown, the thing I like about them is they make it a lot more grounded and they try to convey some kind of story. Like, I really like their Batman vs. Darth Vader, because that is precisely how Batman would approach that fight, in my opinion. Like, the idea, for those been a long time for, Batman shorts out Darth Vader's suit through trickery, forcing Vader to use the Force to sustain himself so he can't use it to fight Batman. and Batman tries to beat him in sword combat, which he should be expert enough to at least have a chance on. Now, in the official one, it doesn't work out. His time kind of runs out, and he tries to just blow up Darth Vader with a ship, and it doesn't, and he just dies from it. But in the alternate version, which is I think the version they wanted to go with, his ship blows up, and he's like, "Your plan has failed," and he goes, "Fighting you wasn't my plan." And then just like he unlocks Superman from the Death Star, and Superman comes in and just knocks the shit out of Vader in one punch. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how Batman would approach that situation. I quite like that story, as opposed to like Death Battle. Even when I
just turn Clark on him.
Yeah. Even when I even when I enjoy the analysis that a Death Battle will come in at, sometimes the winner seems so arbitrary and it seems to cut short so randomly. Like, you just, okay, now it's time to end it. Whereas the superpower beatdowns, there's more of a story to get invested in, or there's, like, some kind of thought put into it from a narrative perspective, and I quite like that.
Well, like, that one you just mentioned, I like Batman. I like Star Wars, but I like Batman a lot more than I like Darth Vader. I don't think there's any way Batman could win that one. And so whenever you say he wins by getting Superman to win, then that stops being a Batman versus Darth Vader fight and becomes a Superman versus Darth Vader fight, I would think.
Maybe. I think the argument would be that he outthought Vader, and that's how Batman wins. Like, the thing, this is what I always talk about with people. Batman doesn't win a fight by punching it in the face. Batman wins a fight by thinking it. He outthinks his opponent constantly. That is my argument for why Batman usually can win any who would win, is because he's pretty good at outthinking people. And that's a very Batman kind of thing, to outthink Vader and distract him so he can unlock Superman. That to me really worked. But no, I agree. Like, should Batman be able to beat Vader even in sword combat? No, absolutely not.
I had a friend, this has been over 10 years ago that I had this conversation with him. He was a huge Iron Man fan, and for all I know, he still is. But we somehow got on the topic of who would win in a fight, Superman or Iron Man. And he was like, well, Iron Man, definitely. And I'm not the biggest Iron Man fan, but I was saying, come on, man, no way does Iron Man win in a fight. And, like, I like Superman more than Iron Man. But I like to think anytime I engage in these, and I don't do it often, but I like to think that I'm trying to be objective about it. Like, if you threw a character I really did like against, like, a really powerful character, I'd say, no, that character doesn't win. But, like, in this case, I was like, no, there's no way Iron Man beats Superman, especially, like, if they've just met each other. And he was like, oh, yeah, he'd find a way. And so, like, I agree with you, Steve. Like, the more we talk about it, like, it is a lot of times like someone just saying, well, I like this character more, so they win. And that, to me, gets really boring whenever you find yourself talking with someone like that. I much more enjoy it whenever you can talk to somebody who's willing to say, I like this character, but they totally lose this fight.
Well, and for the record, Iron Man's like my second or third favorite character in comics. I've read literally every Iron Man comic ever, and Superman would destroy him.
Okay, yeah.
It's actually kind of funny because one of my videos I did that's still like one of the most debated on my channel. Like every so often I get like a comment on it, is Jason versus Wolverine and Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
And that one I'm still like, how's this one suddenly so popular? Like, people break it down to a science of how Wolverine could win or how Jason could beat Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you how it happens. They're fighting, and then they fall behind the table, and then Wolverine pops up, and he's smoking Jason Voorhees' cigar, and the fans voted that he won.
That's like, you see Wolverine has a second, what do they call that, a sub-mutant ability or a secondary mutation? Yeah, like, all he has to do is be behind a table, and he can he becomes invincible and can automatically win any fight, provided he's behind a table. It's kind of like Obi-Wan in the high ground.
Yeah, but Jason throws tables.
But if he throws it, but he's still behind it, it's over.
He's generally in front of him, so I mean,
yeah. Anyway, Yeah, so I don't know. Those get kind of ridiculous. Ruben, it sounds to me like you would much more prefer the death battle ones. So let's talk a little bit more about their format on how they structure them and the pitfalls of that. Steve, you seem to kind of have the hottest take on death battle. You wanna go for it?
Yeah, I don't like death battle. I to be fair, I don't like fan battles in general, but I don't like death battle because of like that weird faux objectivity. Like, it's undeniably well researched and interesting. The problem is just the thing I went back to from the very beginning, which is comic books are not shonen, and Batman and Spider-Man just like creaming up for a fight doesn't make sense to me in any context. So any measure or statistic you use is completely undependable in the actual fight between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
So when Superhero Beatdown has like some kind of faux narrative of why this character happens to be going after this other character, you could see why this character wins, but the problem is always going to be change the scenario up, and the answer is not guaranteed anymore. So trying to say like just measuring the skills of these characters on a metric determines whether or not they win seems really hollow to me, especially when you're thinking about this in shonen logic or even comic book logic of it seems like every arc ever is always about here's someone measuring your power on a number scale and explaining why you can't win. And then the exact opposite happens because you shouldn't measure someone's power on a number scale.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's just fundamentally against the trope that they're trying to recreate.
No, I definitely agree. And the thing that you mentioned the Batman versus Spider-Man one, and I remember the thing I like about Death Battle is even if you don't like the outcome, they will give you, okay, here is our definitive reason why we called this fight this way. And so with Batman versus Spider-Man, it was because we do not feel that unless he has time to prepare for it, Batman would be able to counteract Spider-Man's Spidey sense. Batman depends primarily in combat on stealth and surprise, and that fundamentally does not work on Spider-Man. And I'm like, I can see that. I am a Batman fan. I could sit here and go, I feel like he'd probably catch on about Spider-Sense sooner than you gave him credit for, but I can see the argument there. And so that's what I like about it, is even if it's one I disagree with, I can see the argument, and I can particularly talk about that argument that they are making for why this character should be able to win. I also like that Death Battle does just say, okay, random encounter, no context whatsoever, we're just going. You're right, it loses narrative and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it does make it a lot more fair. Because again, I'm Batman fanboy over here. I'll say Batman can win just about any fight if he's got time to prepare and research, but you throw Batman in the middle of New York City with the Hulk rampaging at him, yeah, Batman's dead. I'm okay with that.
He somehow gets to beat Hulk in that crossover.
I didn't remember that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, he hit Hulk's weak points. I'm like, it's the Hulk. He doesn't have weak points.
Did he gently start singing a lullaby and caressing Hulk's hand?
I mean, that is not beyond Batman to do. I'll tell you that. Sun's getting real low. Sun's getting real low.
I would pay money to see that. I would buy the Steelbook Blu-ray of that. Just 10 seconds of him singing that to the Hulk.
Hey, big guy. Sun's getting real low in the sky right now.
Oh.
Just fucking cuts back to the Quinjet, and Tony Scissor's like, oh yeah, this was a terrible idea.
Oh
man. Anyway. Oh man, I wish we were more popular, because that would so be something someone could animate right there.
Totally. Ian, do you prefer when they try to add a narrative, or do you prefer when it's just these two characters, let's go?
I am so back and forth on that. I cannot properly give you an answer. It depends on my mood.
I personally like it when there's a... Yeah. Honestly, I kind of like a narrative. Me personally, really? I kind of like just a little narrative of, hey, this is how this character interacts with that character. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but damn it, we're here to watch two characters beat the shit out of each other. We got to think of some way.
I think I'm the opposite. I think I don't want any narrative because like I said earlier, when people are like, okay, it's Batman versus Daredevil, but Batman has no and they start adding this stuff, and it's like that's kind of a narrative, sort of. But also you have these characters, and I've even seen people where it's like, I don't know, like Batman versus Moon Knight to the death, who wins? And it's like, well, Batman wouldn't fight to the death. Batman doesn't kill generally, so like. I don't believe that would happen if you add any narrative. But then, like, if you just say, like, okay, these two characters, like, with none of their moral compasses, who would win? Then it's like, okay, that's a whole nother ballgame, and I can kind of throw my I guess it's more objective when you do that. Like, just these two characters, like, with their abilities. It's just their abilities against each other or their skills, and then you don't have to worry about like. Well, Batman doesn't kill, Superman doesn't kill, or, most of these characters don't kill. Then you can just say, okay, here's who would actually win based on what they can do. So I think I'm more about less narrative. But, like, if you can make it work and still have the fight be objective, then I'm all for the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Steve,
let me ask you.
Steve, throw in narrative or quote unquote objectivity.
Generally speaking, narrative, but again, showing an example, like if someone wants someone wants to see a fan battle of like Sasuke versus Yusuke, then no narrative necessary. But Batman versus Daredevil, yes, narrative.
Okay. And like, would you say that you just would like? Do you go along with the conceit that the narrative is fine, the plot armor is fine, I don't care?
Depends on how far they're taking it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's
again, it's just sort of like the problem with comic book characters is that they exist almost entirely based on the context. So without context, I just don't understand what Batman versus Daredevil is. But I completely understand without context what Yusuke versus Sasuke is.
Uh-huh.
Just because the comics are different.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me throw this question out there, guys. What are some fan fights that you always wanted to see or talk about or debate or whatever?
Why don't you answer first while I think of some?
Okay. So I guess like one would be Shishomaru from Inuyasha versus Darth Vader. Like I just like how like demon magic versus the Force. Like that just sounds like a cool fight to me. You've for another one, it would be Vegeta versus Black Adam.
Oh yeah,
I guess also Black Panther. Yeah, Black Panther versus Deathstroke.
These are cool. I like these. For me, I just literally anything with Mogo versus Ego, Mogo versus the Death Star, Mogo versus Galactus. Throw all three.
Mogo versus Unicron.
Sure, yeah, fuck it, why not? Anything like that, I can get real into. Yeah, honestly, this is a crazy one. Starship Enterprise versus the Death Star, I think could be really, really interesting, particularly because of just like Star Trek works on naval combat, whereas Star Wars works on air carrier dogfight combat, and just objectively. There's a reason that the largest battleship ever was made in World War II, and then we stopped making those. It's because aircraft carriers were made, and they're so much more effective. So, like, just objectively, the Death Star should easily win that just with the TIE Fighter accompaniment. But then you can get really interesting, like, can you prove that the TIE Fighters would be able to get through the Enterprise's shields before the Enterprise is able to analyze the Death Star? I don't know. You can have fun with that one. What else? Just try to throw out one more. Batman versus Vegeta. And I will tell you, you give me my plot armor, Batman can win that. The Earth may blow up in the process, but Batman will succeed.
There's a lot of plot armor on that one.
All I have to say is go reread Tower of Babel and look at what his plan was to use against Wonder Woman and tell me that shit would not work on Vegeta. So that's right. You may blow up the Earth in the process, but I swear it would work. How about you, Rupin?
Well, you mentioned Starship Enterprise, and this isn't so much a fight, but I mean, I guess it is, but like I've always wondered, like, if you had Kirk's Enterprise and Picard's Enterprise, like somehow throw them both into the void of space, and they both are told like that's the evil Enterprise from an alternate dimension or whatever. You have to kill it. Like, who would win? And I really don't know the answer to that because I haven't watched enough of either Star Trek show. I've watched like a season of original series. Do what?
Let me make this easy for you. The Enterprise D is, or if you want to go by the movies, Enterprise E would crush the original Enterprise. That thing is so advanced; it was built to fight the fucking Borg. I don't need to, this isn't a debate. This is not a debate. This is, the TNG Enterprise is way more fucking advanced than Kirk's Enterprise. There is no discussion.
Yeah, that's fair because there's like over.
It's literally like Ruin. It is literally like putting a destroyer from World War II against a destroyer from current era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me say this in Ruben's defense. I don't think the interesting thing there is the ships versus each other. I think it's the crew, right? That's the battle you want to see.
Yeah, and so maybe it would have to be like you throw Kirk and Picard on a planet with the Gorn or whatever, and the Gorn is taking a nap, and then they have to fight each other or something like that. Because I wasn't even thinking about technology, like you said, but yeah, and that's one of those things. Like, I mean, people have for decades have been saying, "Oh, who's better, Kirk or Picard?" And I'm always like, I don't care enough to answer that. And then you got that one smart aleck who will say Adama is better. And then I just want to like reach through the screen and punch them because it's like that wasn't the question. Talking Star Trek, I don't even care about it enough to answer, but I know it's not Adama.
Hashtag Janeway wins.
Show asshole.
That's fair.
Adama's Battlestar Galactica. Asshat.
Yeah. How about you, Steve? Any verse battles you'd like to watch?
I recently watched My Hero Academia, so All Might versus Superman would be a lot of fun. I think that could go pretty well for a while.
Honestly, though, I think Superman would win because All Might's strength kind of burns out.
Yeah, that's fair. You'd have to have some serious constraints on how long the fight goes and where it's going to make that one work.
I would kind of like to see Superman fight All for One.
Ooh, that'd be fun. I'm down for that. Or All for One versus Venom. That'd be fun too.
Yeah.
So those Avatar Aang versus Captain Marvel. I think that would be really interesting.
Which Captain Marvel?
Marvel Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah, not Shazam. Shazam's different.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Especially, well, see, at first I thought you were thinking of the Shazam Captain Marvel because I was thinking like Aang's a kid, Captain Marvel's basically a kid, but really, any way you slice that, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, that'd be fun, and it would definitely be like adult Aang though. I wouldn't think of like Avatar: Last Airbender teenager Aang.
I would say also another one I'd like to see is like Frieza versus Darkseid and Azula versus Kylo Ren. Those are two others I've always thought about.
Azula versus Kylo Ren would be really cool.
Yeah. I think, like, something else we can talk about with this is the general weirdness of trying to cross over platforms like that. Because you mentioned Frieza versus Darkseid. There's, of course, the infamous battle around Superman versus Goku. And that's, like, one of those things where, like, the feats are just... Like, people try to do the whole objective thing and compare feats, and I'm like... No, because, like, Roshi blew up the fucking moon in first era Dragon Ball, and there's just no way you can convince me that Roshi is just slightly less powerful than Frieza at that point, because by necessity he would have to be. Like, just to be able, either that or planets are just really easy to blow up with Ki Blast. I just, like, I don't know, like, so you just talk about, like, feats like that, like, Superman's never destroyed a planet, but Goku clearly has the ability to, since he could defeat Frieza. I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong, but there's just, that's the plot armor, though, right? That's just the thing, the conceit is, yeah, this universe is just super easy to blow up planets. That's all it comes down to.
Dragon Ball more than any other anime though. Like I think even when Naruto gets godly annoying with its power scaling, nothing's ever as bad as Dragon Ball because Dragon Ball after Vegeta shows up is completely incomprehensible as to how powerful they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vegeta shows up and can blow up the planet. There's like by the time you get to fucking Ultra Instinct, there is no way you can comprehend how strong these people are. When Beerus first shows up, him and Goku's fight is apparently going to destroy the universe.
Yep.
How do you
just because of
that?
punches. And like, yeah, that's the thing for me is like Beerus,
And not even direct punches, just shockwaves.
right? Like that's the thing for me when Beerus shows up and he doesn't like the dessert on the one alien planet. He's like, not bad, I'll take half. And he just like clicks his finger and half the planet blows up. I'm like, okay, first of all, how? Just the physics of that are like blowing my fucking mind. And so just the idea that like Goku could take him on and the dude has to use 80% of his power to do it is like, okay, that's really fucking weird to think about. The power scaling levels there are completely ridiculous. And I will say, to comment on the Death Battle Goku vs. Superman one, so are the power scaling levels for comic books. Because, yeah, they do make the argument that Superman lifts infinity. And it's just like, what? Like these, you have these writers who just fucking go and do whatever the fuck they want. They don't do the math. Grant Morrison has Superman lift a book of infinite pages because it's cool and it's a big mythic thing and it's really interesting. He doesn't do the fucking math on that, but it's not like Grant Morrison is a writer who doesn't do the math because he's also the one in his Justice League run that gave Flash the infinite mass punch, and he physically did the fucking math on that. So it's just shit like that. It's like, it's so crazy that when you, like, it's one thing when you're talking within comics, but it's a completely different thing when you start to talk about, like, crossing genres or mediums even like that. They're just, like, you don't understand, like, the incomprehensible crap these writers have had these characters do.
Well, and then there's even, like, the minutia of it, right? Where, like, Superman's hurt by magic. Is Ki magic?
The argument is no. The argument is it's a physical force that anyone could master. So back to Goku versus
But so is magic.
Maybe, but like back to Batman versus Vegeta. So if Batman has knowledge of Vegeta, does he have knowledge of Ki? Can Batman suddenly learn to use Ki, and because he's such a fucking like super disciplined martial artist that he masters everything, can Batman become the strongest fighter in the universe? Like it's just, you start getting into really weird questions here. Because like you wouldn't say Yamcha's like not using I wouldn't say Yamcha's using magic because Dragon Ball establishes that magic's a different thing than Ki.
But like, but that the issue just becomes like when you cross the universes, which definition do you pick?
Right? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, there's
how do you determine Ki from mana? That's the big like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you determine Ki from mana? If we're crossing our fucking Full Metal Alchemist, is alchemy magic?
I don't know, man.
If you're talking to Constantine, then it is. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it gets really weird, and so like the more you try to cross these things, the more it just clearly doesn't work, and you just have to start like, it's like when you get a puzzle and like you're just getting really frustrated, and so you just try to force that like one fucking piece down.
Yeah.
It starts to feel like that. It's like, yeah, well, we're just gonna ignore this part and focus on this part, and then you get the whole puzzle put together, and it's all fucking skewed and looks like a goddamn Picasso, even though it's a fucking Norman Rockwell. And then you're left with people arguing over what it's meant to be.
One thing you talked about earlier was like, what we've all talked about is like fans who ignore, like fans who will say like, oh, Iron Man could win against Superman when they're just basically ignoring the Superman, like what Superman can do, and they're hyping up what Iron Man can do. I've even seen, not necessarily in versus stuff, but like I've seen actual writers do that to an extent. Like I remember I was on the Marvel message boards for a few years when they first started, by 2006, and it was a huge deal when Red Hulk was able to A, defeat Thor, and B, jump up onto the moon and clock out the Watcher. Which the Watcher's not even a fighting character, but just the fact that he's on the moon and he's a cosmic being, and the Red Hulk just says, "Hey, I'm going to punch him," and like nobody's going to make the mistake of saying that Jeff Loeb is a good writer or that run of comics is good, but like that was, and I remember one of the moderators on the message board saying like, "Well, it's his own comic. Of course he's going to win a fight in his own comic," and I'm thinking, no, like Thor is a god. Like Thor clearly trumps any Earth-like being, even someone who gets stronger the angrier he gets. Like I was just, and that was just, that whole series was just nonsense. But like I've seen stuff like that from creators that, if you're a fan and you're wanting to use evidence to support your fight, like, well, here's why so-and-so would win. It's because he won against this character in this issue. You can do that, but then it all kind of falls apart when you look at what other creators have done. Like I was telling Ian last week off camera that I was reading one of Jim Starlin's more recent Infinity books. It was like Infinity Revelation, or one of those really short original graphic novels. And it was in it. They talked about how easily Gladiator was defeated, and Gladiator is basically a Marvel version of Superman. And in the John Byrne Fantastic Four comics, they make a big deal about how Gladiator is so strong that if he believes he can do something, he can do it. And he actually lifted an entire skyscraper. And Reed Richards was over here saying that's physically impossible. He should not be able to do that. But he thought he could do it, and so he did it. And then in this Jim Starlin book, Starlin is talking about how easily defeated Gladiator was, but then they made a huge deal about how I think Annihilus was able to defeat the Hulk. And I was over here thinking, like, I'm pretty sure Gladiator's stronger than the Hulk. But according to Jim Starlin, like, the Hulk is a big deal, but Gladiator is just, you know, the Yamcha of the Marvel Universe or whatever. So, like, I feel like you could use canon to
like I really like that idea. Like I kind of want to just create a character now, like a superhero with like super self-doubt issues, where like all he has to do is believe in himself and he can literally do anything, but he's like got super like problems with his self-confidence, so he's always like doubting himself, and he's always getting like beaten up by like children.
That character, his name, yeah, they did that character. His name was the Sentry. It was really fucking stupid.
No, I'm gonna like really get into this. It's gonna be it's gonna be like, I'm gonna pitch this to Tom King, and he's gonna make it the saddest thing ever.
It'd be great.
Oh man,
God, Tom King! I shudder to think what Tom King would do with the Sentry. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that stuff gets kind of ridiculous when writers. I sometimes feel like writers just do that shit just to spite people. Like, I don't know, I was reading Margaret Bennett's Batwoman that just wrapped up, and she did a thing where Batman was pissed off at Kate Kane, so he wasn't listening to her, and so Kate Kane fought him, and it's like a pretty knockdown, drag-out fight for a bit, and then she plays dirty and, like, plays the same caliber of gunshot that Bruce Wayne's parents were killed by, and it's just enough to distract him so that she can get a sucker punch in and knock him down. And, like, the caption, I'm trying to remember the caption, it read, like, and yeah, I cheated and I feel awful about myself, but you know what? I did it. I fucking beat Batman. And I can't help but feel like that was just put in there because Margaret Bennett's listened to fans talking about how Batwoman's great and all, but she could never beat Batman. So it's just like, here's just a little bit of salt. just fucking throw some salt in the wound right there real quick. Because, I don't know, that's a plausible enough explanation to me. I'd buy it.
I don't know, because Batman has been being Batman for, like, I don't know, depending on what continuity you're looking at, like 15 years. I think he's heard gunshots before.
But
and so,
like the specific sound of the one that killed his parents, like as much as he dwells on that, you don't think that would just a half a second of hesitation?
I mean, he might hesitate, but I would say he's even heard that same, like, I would think that's not a special gun. So I would think he's heard that type of sound before after his parents died. So I don't know. I haven't read the comic. I do think it sounds very petty, and I haven't read that comic, but
I mean, it's petty as shit, and I love it.
and I'm also
Yeah.
like not to be that fan that she was probably like throwing the middle finger at, but I also don't think that she would beat Batman. But hey, it's happened now, so there's no undoing it. So and I don't care that much that it has happened. But if you had asked me before that happened, I would say no. I think Batman's probably had more training. He would probably beat her. But then you could find a way, and any and all creators will.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's interesting to see when creators do that. To go back to the whole YouTube phenomenon of doing fan battles and stuff, I will say the thing that is undeniably entertaining about those, even regardless of how you might feel about these whole fan fight things, it's really cool to see when it's done well, the animation and like the live action ways these are acted out. Those are really fun to watch. Death Battle's gotten really good at the animation. I love their episodes when they do in 3D. They used to all do just straight pixelated stuff. They're still doing that a bit, but now they're mixing it with more of like it's not hand-drawn because it's on a computer, but quote-unquote hand-drawn animation style. And so that's really cool. God, Superpower Beatdown, those guys want to make movies so badly. Because those are cinematic as fuck. It's cool as shit.
Well, they're doing like a short film for the Power Rangers X Street Fighter thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, done like little films. Like they've done a whole thing for Valiant Comics, a mini show. They've done like high-end stuff on a low budget. So
yeah,
but it's very obvious they want to. The guys want to do more.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and they've been doing it for years. Obviously, everyone knows City of Scars by this point. So, that aspect of it's just really entertaining. And Manos and I do the whole fan film reviews. And like I've had people in the past ask, "Are you ever going to cover any of these?" I'm like, probably not, because there's just nothing to talk about unless you're just going to be analyzing the fight. And it's so crazy because there are people that just do that. They reanalyze the fight, and there's like, you can go search it right now where people are going to be like, Batman versus or Superman versus Goku debunked, where they're like specifically talking about the episodes of Death Battle that talked about this. I'm like, Jesus Christ! There's shows on the fan show. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. To which I respond with, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
I don't know. Steve and I have had the argument before, so
Several times.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's been on recording, so people can go watch those if they want. We've done a good job of not getting into that one today, which I appreciate, Steve. Thank you for just letting
I'm
me
not ready.
You're not ready for it?
No, I'm just not ready like right now.
Oh, okay. 5 minutes from now, maybe, but hey.
So I have a quick thing I want to talk about, which is related to this, but also like more of a meta question about this. Are comic book fights really that interesting?
Ooh.
Like, I don't mean like watching death battles or watching a movie or like an action sequence that like clearly has visual stimulation. Are people really like enthralled when they look at panels of people fighting?
I am, but it depends on like how much the fight goes. Like, how long does it go? If it's like 2 pages, then I'll feel like, well, what was the point? Like, if it's like several pages long, if there's stakes involved, by all means, go ahead. I'll be enthralled. But if it's like 2 pages and it's obviously you already know who's going to win, then don't waste my fucking time.
I think that's fair. I don't know, like, I guess I'll just go straight to it. Dark Knight Returns, I think that's a great fight on the page. There's a lot of stakes put into it, though. So, like, yeah, for me...
There's a lot of stakes put into it, but, like, I don't, like, read that scene as this is a cool fight.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it's not a cool fight. It's an emotionally and narratively intense conflict. I think that's a fundamentally different thing from just being like, cool explosion or cool kick or something like that.
Yeah, because like the whole thing about a fight that makes like a fight scene in a movie or whatever cool is the kinetic motion, and you don't have that in a comic. So it's, I don't know, you need the right kind of artists on it, because I've definitely like seen a fight going on in a comic and I'm like really into it, and then there's times where I'm like, okay, yeah, action scene, all right, here we are.
Yeah, because like being into a fight's one thing, but I think it's another to be like, I don't understand, like, if someone's like, did you see how Doomsday punched Superman in the face or something like that? Like, I've never seen that described in that way, like it's a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it seems like that has to be there for any of this to be a relevant discussion.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite fights would be Hulk and Wolverine's fight from, I'm forgetting the issue number, but it's the Todd McFarlane drawn one. You know, with the cover with Wolverine, like Hulk's image on Wolverine's claws.
Yeah.
I can't remember the issue number. Yeah, that's that's one of my favorite fights.
Well, and
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Is it 181 or 183? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ruben brought up this, and it's, I think it's a good point, is like, you know, could you do a book that's just versus battles, like, as an official published thing? And I'm like, you know, I could see it, but that would entirely be on the artist at that point, right? Like, you'd need a great action artist to be able to pull that off.
A monthly schedule will be very difficult on that one.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, it's an interesting idea, though.
And getting interesting characters paired up against each other, because I think some character pair-offs would be like, this is really boring, why would you pick these two? Like, they're on such a level playing field, like, I don't care. And then some of them would be like, they're so far apart, like, I also don't conceivably buy it. So, like, it'd be very difficult to pull it off, now that I think about it.
Yeah. I don't know, there's something to that. We lost it.
You want to plan that a little bit, where, like, you have, like, say, 5 fights that are just, like, weird corners of the universe, and you get, like, just vague characters doing something, and then have an end of an arc where it's a big fight between 2 titular characters.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of, like, play with that structure a little bit.
Yeah, I could see it. I don't know, it could be interesting. I guess the question would be, would it be better as a Marvel or a DC book? Which company do you think would actually be able to pull that off better?
I think, like, if you're doing, like, it depends on, like, if you're allowed to pull from all over the multiverse, like, I think DC would be more interesting for that, because we know more about the DC multiverse. Like, and I think they did that kind of with, it was a few years ago, but, it wasn't Infinite Crisis, but it was one of the crises that we did recently where, like, different versions of characters were fighting each other. Like, the Vampire Batman is fighting, like, the Dark Knight Returns Batman, and that was, oh man, I mean, it was around Countdown. I guess it was Infinite Crisis maybe, but where all these different versions of each other were fighting, and it was like in different. Do either of you know what I'm talking about? Because I feel like
I don't remember this at all.
It wasn't like a main event. It was like a tie-in to an event. I'll look it up. But
okay.
You know, DC has kind of done something like that, and then, like, you know, we had the Contest of Champions, which I haven't read, and then that was like, I think Contest of Champions was like one of the very first like big event books from either company. And then we had a more recent Contest of Champions, which was a tie-in to Secret Wars. So, like, we've seen it from both, but never, like, done, like, let's see how long we can do it, how long we can stretch it out, which is what I'd be interested to see them try and do.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I don't know, it could be an interesting ride. God, we can't get Deadpoolzilla back in. This call is stupid. Skype, you suck. Let it be known throughout the cosmos.
Skype's latest update is the worst fucking interface I have ever seen.
Yes.
It's so fucking bad. I can't stand it.
Who would win, Skype or a decent interface? Apparently Skype.
Clearly not a decent interface.
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm having trouble figuring out what's worse, Google or YouTube or Skype.
Have you seen the new Creator Studio? It's garbage. Like, admittedly, the current Creator Studio was garbage when it first started up, but, like, new Creator Studio is, like, hot garbage.
Yeah.
Like you don't realize how good the garbage you have is until they light your garbage on fire, and then you're like, no,
You've been
my
saying
garbage.
this for 10 fucking years. You know how much easier it was to make videos when we only had 10 minutes?
Right?
I would give up unlimited uploads to have that interface back, damn it.
Oh man, that is a bold claim, sir. All right. Well, we got just a couple minutes left, and I don't know if Deadpoolzilla is going to be back in the call or not. So maybe this is like super fitting that this is the baton toss. Let's.
I win, Deadpoolzilla. You hear that? I win.
Let's legit talk about this. So, this is so stupid, but who would win? Which geeky gentleman in this call would win in a fight? Let's go for this. Can anyone make an argument for why they think they would win, or do they want to make an argument for why they think someone else would win? Because that'd be funnier too.
I know martial arts, and that's all I got.
You know martial arts, huh? But
That's all I got.
But I don't know. I feel like I could legit take you, and not like
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm not. It's not that I know martial arts. It's just like I just had an older brother who was much bigger than me, and so I just learned. Yeah, you're gonna get beat up.
How much
fucking,
prep time do we have?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like as long as it takes you to get here, or vice versa.
What are the ground rules here?
Okay.
You get a weapon or
nothing in the throat because we need to be able to podcast still.
right?
No weapons because we want this to be a fair test of skill. We don't want people talking about the weaponry.
Okay.
But no, like I had an older brother, and I just learned like, yeah, you're gonna get hit. Just like take him down, and so I got really good at just mauling people.
That's
so, like,
fair.
You might be strong, Steve, and I may only weigh 100 pounds, but like if I just kind of like flop all over you, I feel like I've got something going here.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those where like I would need all three of us standing in a room together just to size up to see.
Yeah, yeah. Like we could do like the half-hour like intro to Geeky Gentlemen. We're all just like staring at each other and talking about like our skill set and how no one has a chance, and how
tall are you?
I am 5'6", sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I still don't know that. I thought if you were much taller than me, then maybe I could get something going. But no.
Now we're just about the same size.
Yeah.
I
think I'm a little taller, but aside from that,
it's the weirdest thing when you meet someone that you only know from the internet, and you're like, God, I imagine you so differently, like size-wise.
I'm gonna say I am 6'4", or like 6'3 3/4", but I don't think
Ruben's got this. He's got both of us.
See, that's the thing is like in
Ruben's
my
just
mind,
gonna do the thing where he like puts his hand on our foreheads, and we just like.
I like to think of myself as like if I was like, you know, if it was like a terrorist situation, like a Die Hard, and it's like I can do this thing, and it's like in my mind I think I can do it, but then it's like in reality it's like, holy crap, like this hurts, like trying to like climb up, climb the
Ruben
shimmy
gets
up
fucking
the thing.
stuck in the air vent. He's just like,
yeah,
it's hot in here.
Like I feel like in my and I'd say we're all like that. Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I could do this, but it's like, no, probably not. Like
it has been a number of years since I've been in a fight. To be fair, that it's been since high school since I've been in a fight. So
yeah, same. It's been a while.
I don't think I've ever really been in a fight.
Okay, well, you need to go watch Fight Club because that movie has some things to say to you about your masculinity related to whether or not you've been in a fight, sir.
Oh, okay. Actually, I saw Fight Club at work today. I may need to go and buy it tomorrow.
I mean, it's a good movie, but realize it's a satire and don't fucking devote your whole life to it like some fucking pathetic losers on the internet.
I feel very bad for anyone that tells me Fight Club's their favorite movie.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Let's see if I can
I don't
add.
think I've ever met a person who is a reasonable, decent human being that says Fight Club's their favorite movie.
I've also heard this about people who say, it's something about Rick and Morty, where they're like, Rick and Morty is for intellectuals who...
Oh, God.
Yeah, no, fuck that.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Fuck that. They make fart jokes just like everything else.
Oh, man. Is there
Personally,
even?
I don't enjoy Rick and Morty, but it is not that smart.
No, it's really not. Is there even like a cartoon that is for intellectuals? Is there actually an intellectual cartoon?
I mean, honestly, most of what Cartoon Network's got right now is actually pretty fucking deep and smart.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, like, Steven Universe is really good. Adventure Time's always had, like, a really good, consistent thread of existential dread. We Bear Bears is actually a really good commentary about race in America. Like, Cartoon Network's got some shit.
Cartoon Network, stay woke.
Yeah.
All right.
Ironically, more woke than Adult Swim.
Oh, man.
Steven Universe had a whole episode about body shaming recently that was really, really sad and touching.
Interesting. Oh. Okay. Well, I think we're about done with the Who'd Wins. I want to apologize to Deadpoolzilla. I'm sure everyone's heard me trying to add him back into the call. It's just not working.
Yeah, I tried to. I think it was just an issue on his end. We tried. Deadpoolzilla.
Yeah, sorry, bro. But thanks again for your service in the honored halls of Geeky Gentlemen. We'll hang your portrait and Steve will sit under it. All right. Well, Steve is now back. Hashtag Steve's back. Hashtag Steve's here. And so I figured it'd be fair to just let you choose our topic for review next week, Steve.
Let's review Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, God, shit. Okay. Yeah, just like no hold barred. We're going deep immediately. I like it. All right. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Exile.
I'm the Comics Kid 2099.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.